minutes from February 2025 attached. If everybody would please take a look at them and.
Bill, we do have two other guests behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, please, both of you, and.
Had my screen on.
Go ahead.
I'm Suzanne Clumo, and I'm a passionate resident who comes to get the scoop.
I'm Michelle Myers. I'm a housing specialist with St. Johns County Housing Department.
I'm Ken McLean. I'm a community activist with CARE.
All right. Now we'll go on to the minutes. Sorry about that. So if anybody has any corrections or additions, anything, if y'all have, has anyone got any changes to it? Or can we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? Quiet. All right. Next is the administrative report from Ms. Harvey.
Hey everybody, I just want to share with you the group that internally in housing, we are scheduling interviews for our backfill of the head housing counselor position. We have one head housing counselor now, and we've advertised, closed the advertisement and selected candidates for our housing counselor. So interviews are expected first middle of next week. And sharing with the group that our down payment assistance program has closed 14 homes since the rollout in September of 2024. Very exciting. I'll have a visual for that probably next meeting to share with you. Impact fees, we have been working on the impact fee strategy for nonprofit providers, developers, and it's in the final stages. We expect a draft to be sent to Florida Housing later this month. And our community development block grant notice of funding availability is posting. It's actually on our website now. And we will be accepting applications in later this spring. I think they're due May 9th. The housing department is set to assist off Omega Miracle Home with 2 one-bedroom units for purchase and rehab to add to their already standard houses in the same neighborhood where they already have some. They're adjacent and adjoining. And then I wanted to share with everybody from this group that Matt Wyman from Florida Housing presented at the HFA last month. And gave a productive workshop on community land trusts. So I felt like it was super informative. I have the PowerPoint for anybody who would like a copy of it. Yep, I absolutely, I can send it to everybody as a flat blanket immediately preceding this meeting. And that's my report.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask Jenny about that?
Well, so community land trust is one of the things we haven't really.
We haven't delved into it too much
delved
here.
into yet, but I think that
It's an
might be
option.
on our next 3 items, right?
Could be, yep.
Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation, and Priscilla had some productive comments and interest from the HFA, which yielded the invite where Matt attended last month. So it was great. I definitely learned some things. So
Bill, you had done some work with that with the city, right? Or you would try to, or?
We're going through, or started going through the whole training certification program. The city wanted to do something with some of the lots or some of the property that they had or wanted to acquire inside the Lincolnville CRA. And I just told them, I don't think you need to create a CLT if you're only gonna have 2 or 3 lots. It's just a really cumbersome process to do it. But you can essentially accomplish the same thing through other means if they wanna basically tie something up in perpetuity, it's not that hard to do it. But the bigger part of it is finding a piece of property that sort of makes sense to do that over there. The city commission, in talking to them, they were more interested in doing it for a home ownership opportunity as opposed to possibly some additional rental opportunities. But with the money they've got, if you're lucky, you're gonna buy one. You just the price of lots in Lincolnville are over 250,000 these days. I mean, it's just nuts. Plus, you know, I'm really torn, but I can't see building there without lifting it, pick a number, 4, 5, 6, 10 feet off the ground. I mean, it's gonna flood. Does it make sense to build affordable housing in a flood zone? I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Roberson, you're here to talk to us about impact fees or answer questions or?
Yeah, I'd ask Mr. Cohen or Ms. Harvey to kind of maybe summarize again. I think the chair asked for me or someone to speak about impact fees related to that, and maybe you summarize, Jenny, you'd send me some sentences that what they maybe specifically were looking for, because that's a broad topic.
Right,
Yeah.
so they wanted to, understand the origin and kind of how the function of it, would apply here. We have members that are new to AHAC, and then we have some seasoned members, so like a short recap, and then, just a description of how they administrate out and how it works for your department.
Sure. So again, I'm Mike Robertson, I'm the Director of Growth Management, that's one of the departments in the county. And, we obviously try to manage growth. And that is the point where we enforce, what's called impact fees. Impact fees are a one-time charge to anybody that's developing, and that could range from the biggest developers that you see to mom and pop building a residence on their property. And impact fees are, every local jurisdiction, they don't have to impose impact fees, they can, and this county chose to back in the 80s. And if you do so, the statutes regulate how that money can be spent, and there's categories. And so, for example, if it's residential development, then per residence, you have a school impact fee, you have a public building fee, this building, for example. You have a road fee, you have a sheriff, and a fire, and then also a parks and rec fee. So those are the impact fees for residential. Commercial or non-residential is a little different because parks and rec doesn't apply, neither do schools, but everything else is a standard. So when you come in, that money is, again, it's a one-time fee, and that money has to go into those pots, and it has to be spent on that. So the county doesn't have the ability to use that money for anything else but other than parks and rec, schools, etc. So the idea, that's for capital infrastructure. So once we have that money in the pot, again, I don't see it after that. We're just a hammer, we collect it, and then it goes to budget. And then they divvy it out to the respective departments, for example, Public Works, if we need capital projects. And that basically means a new project, right? It can't be maintenance or anything like that. So it's basically the impacts that development is causing, that's what it's paying for. So if that makes sense. You can't charge any developer or any mom and pop for any development that any impacts that they didn't cause. So that's in a nutshell what impact fees are. It's been in the news recently, or our news at least. We are going through an impact fee study where the county in our ordinance states that the board of county commissioners will look at our impact fee totals, our fees, what we charge every 5 years, and we get a PhD to come in and look at it all, and they evaluate a lot of different data, and they basically suggest, here board, this is the highest that you can charge and be defensible. So that's where we're at right now. We're in the middle of the study. We came to the board and we got some direction, so we've been sent back for a few items, and eventually we'll come back to the board with a consultant that's working with us and go, here board, what would you like to do? Their options are to go from the highest maximum to anywhere they would like to go. And again, they can't go really above that and be defensible. We had some recent changes in legislation too that came down and changed the way impact fees, you can increase, so they put some limitations on it. I know I'm getting into it a little bit, and I'll get out with this real quickly because it's getting into detail, but it's just a little bit of that lack of home rule kind of thing a little bit. You can only charge 50% greater than what you currently charge. That was never a rule before, and when you increase the charge, you have to roll it out in phases now.
Increments.
In increments, so that more work for staff, but also just trying to figure out how we're gonna do that, because you can't just go boom. I can understand that, if you had a jurisdiction that had a huge increase that could be pretty devastating to an industry or citizens or that matter. So the impact fees, we have the categories and they list them out, and with respect to residential, because I think that's probably a lot what we talk about in here, right, affordable housing. A few years ago, or maybe in 2018 rather, we broke up into tiers. So if you're a small home, 800 square feet or less, your fees are gonna be lower than a 10,000 square foot home in Ponte Vedra, right? You know, and so we have I think 7 different tiers that list out those fees. So we collect these fees, they go in the pot. One of the things that came up that's relevant to you all here in our study was we got direction, Commissioner Whitehurst brought up that he would like for us to investigate or research 60% AMI, annual median income, or area median income, and which is really, we haven't had that before, and he asked us to look into it and come back with some potential suggestions for affordable housing. Most of the time, a lot of the stuff, maybe you all have seen it, but a lot of it's, Joe and I work in this world a lot, it's 80% to 120% AMI, which is great for some, but it doesn't get the ones that, you know, arguably need it the most.
For service industry.
Yeah, you know, so that was really exciting to hear, because a lot of the last few years, maybe last 10 years, it's been, no, we want any development to pay its share. We don't care if it's affordable housing or not, you know, we have infrastructure, understandably so. So anyway, they've asked us to look into that. So we're having the consultant look into that. The options there would be just completely waive them. Other options would be maybe at a reduced rate or something like that. So that would incentivize affordable housing in a big way, because that's, impact fees can be big money, right? For example, I think it's around, you know, we're talking probably the smaller homes for affordable housing, right? If you're talking 1,200 square feet, I think it's it's about $14,000 per home.
Wow.
Well, if you had a multifamily, 200 units, do the math, right? That's big money. So if the county decides to waive that or even reduce it, that could be a huge incentive for people to come in and do it, because we get a lot of people come in, or we have people come in and ask about affordable housing, and if you can't get those, you know, you already gotta go through a rezoning, you gotta buy expensive land in St. Johns County, but if you could get a big chunk of that taken away, it might be an option for them, and we haven't had a lot of that, so that's kind of an exciting thing for affordable housing, because we all know I have 2 sons that they can't live here, unless, you know, they were living with 5 people, so. So anyway, that's good news for the AHAC, and I know that's one of the things that your board would look at in the number of things that you look to incentivize and get affordable housing here. So that's interesting. Follow the board meetings on the impact fee update. We don't have the next meeting yet, but it'll be coming. My guess is we'll have to give an update here in a month or 2. So that's really exciting. So with that, that's kind of, I hope I explained the impact fees, what they are, what's coming, and then I guess any questions you all have?
Can I ask the first question?
Yes.
So maybe you guys haven't looked at this yet, but I know the Live Local requires a certain percentage of affordable units, right? How would that tie into some of these impact fee thoughts? Have you had that conversation?
Well, I think affordable housing and the Live Local, the developers to have the right to go to, I think it's 80 to, right, it doesn't even dip into, they're not required to go to 60.
Right.
No, they're mostly at 80 and above.
Yeah, now, I guess if it has the option to go to 60 and it was more lucrative because of the impact fee waivers, then maybe.
Yeah.
Live Local is an act that the state implemented, and it basically says local jurisdictions, we're gonna allow developers to come in anywhere in your county that has non-residential development zoning in it, like a mixed use, or, I don't know if it had industrial, I can't remember if they took that out, but just think of non-residential type uses, commercial, that if it has that zoning, they can come in by right and put affordable housing in there. So that's a big change for local governments. They're taking that power away. But nonetheless, we have 2 projects that have come in There's one being cleared at Mission Trace, they're the Publix, by the Highway Patrol at Woodlawn, or is that on the other side, is that 4 Mile, or?
Yeah, 4
No, or
Kenmore.
Kenmore.
Yeah.
Right there on the other side of the Publix, there's, clearing, and that's actually Live Local, so they're coming in, there's nothing we can do, it's by right. Other than that, they'll still have to come in and permit through us and do all their civil engineering, but the rights are there.
And they only have a percentage requirement that they have to do that's affordable?
Yeah, 30 or
Like
40%, I think
Yeah, I
it
can't remember what
is.
the number is off, I've been trying to follow some of the changes too that are.
But it's still
being proposed.
like they can max out at 120, so they don't even have to hit folks who are at 90%, as long as they just stay under 120.
Yeah, that was the hard part, I think, to digest, was that the percentage wasn't,
It wouldn't help them a whole lot.
wasn't real low. And we already have workforce housing, which I think you all are familiar with, workforce housing zoning, that basically is in that range. And it has a 30% or 40% requirement, so we have some coverage there. But we need, I think all of us can agree, the lower, what we don't have is good incentives for, at the local level, for the 60% and stuff. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What's the other project? You said there was two.
There's another one out at the John Lexon property, so if you had 207 at the I-95 interchange, heading westbound, that would be the northeast quadrant. There's one coming in there. We have some other ones that they're just sitting there in limbo, we're not sure if they're gonna fulfill it, but, you know, there's, as long as they meet all the standard regular codes, they can go.
They can do it.
Yep, yep, so.
Mike, is there a time certain?
Judy, go ahead, Judy, I'm sorry. Judy.
Quiet, so you didn't hear my.
I pointed at her already, I didn't wanna.
You can't see. you.
She's on my PZA if I make her mad.
Yeah, I know.
Don't make me mad. I just a couple of quick questions, just for my own knowledge. Who determines the amount? You said that, they can go, the county commissioners can go back and go up or down.
Mhm.
Is it a state statute that determines the basic amount, like per unit, and roads are set, that county?
The state
specific?
statute determines,
How
where,
quickly?
they'll go into their individual pockets. They also require some things called the dual rational nexus, which means that it has to do with being fair and how you charge developers.
Okay,
But the number you come up with is really whatever the standard methodology is, that's defensible by your
In your
PhD,
particular
whatever the
county.
consultant is, whoever's doing it.
okay,
So obviously we hire somebody who's professional to do that and be able to defend it.
okay. Well, that makes sense. I just didn't know if it was something that came from down, that we had to work around. And next question was, incremental rollouts, you talked about Florida statute, do they all end up paying, like you said, incremental rollouts, if you have a 50% higher thing, does that mean that the first 2 years, they only have to pay 20%, the next, okay, so they don't get a longer
So
time
they
to
don't,
pay
we
it
don't hit them
out?
with 100% at this, upfront. And it depends on if it's 50% or over, how you, and we don't know how we're supposed to do it
Okay,
yet, by the
okay.
way, we haven't accomplished it, we've just gotten the guidance from the state that
Okay.
it's incrementally. At the end of the day, it'll be 100%, but that could be 4 to 5 years.
Okay,
So when you get that full, by the time you're looking at your impact fees again, it changes.
and we're talking about the impact fees for, affordable housing. Is there a way that they could like backload it so it could be paid later instead of upfront for, affordable
The
housing?
board, the one provision that the board can't waive impact fees except the fact that they left a provision in the impact fee ordinance that's a placeholder. They call it workforce housing, but I think the intent there, it just says, should the, kind of basically it implies that the county ever decide to do that, here's a place to talk about it, so, and implement something.
Okay.
So,
So that's a possibility.
so that goes into what the consultant's gonna come back with, and if the board so chooses to give a complete waiver, half waiver, whatever it is, on the fees, then we'll include that in our, that waiver in our impact fee ordinance, and, you know, and then of course, we'll do the calculation whenever some affordable housing project comes in.
And part of an answer to your question is on single-family permitting, for years, we've been allowed to pay the impact fee towards the end of the build, rather than having to finance it right up front and carry it. But I don't know how many folks, I mean, we use it, Habitat uses it for obvious reasons, but I don't know if many other folks do, because I don't think there's any kind of requirement for income testing, or, used to be, the joke was that if you had an affordable home, you would put that building permit on a pink piece of paper so everybody knew what was going through. But I don't think there's a way currently we do it other than just sort of, if Habitat does it, you know they're doing it, or if we try and do it, or one or two others, but I don't think small builders try and go in with that sense of, can I pay my impact fee at the end? You have to pay it before your CO.
Yeah, the statute recently changed maybe a year or two ago, and they changed where a jurisdiction couldn't get it on the front too far in front, forward. They wanted that flexibility for the builder or developer. We had already charged them at electrification anyway, so it didn't really affect us, but, when you're getting power to the site is when we require it, so it meets statute, that's when we ask for it, so, but it is a little bit further into the process.
So I had a couple questions. You meant the impact fee, part of it is, there's a part for the school, but that's different from what the schools charge with a concurrency fee?
Yeah, so, and concurrency is a whole nother,
Whatever, yeah.
that might be confusing, but, there's other processes that we have concurrency that the county and other jurisdictions enforce. And that has to do, and that's also by statute, sewer, there's another one, a couple others that they have to be done, but others are optional. The optional ones are transportation concurrency, and then schools, I think also, maybe that's one that's required or whatever, but concurrency is basically when a development comes in, impact fees do get paid on the back end. Think of a developer that comes in and they have 300 units and they're trying to get approval. Well, what about the impacts that they're creating if they were to come in and get COs for all 300 certificates of occupancy where people could live in them, right? And you're getting the money you're getting the money as they're being built. Well, what if you have to design a road? That could take 2 years, or design 4-lane to accommodate their impacts, right? So concurrency is something that kind of at the same time, right, concurrent? And basically that means you're getting money on the front end before impact fees when they do impacts to things like roadways and school districts. We take that money so we can get it in the process and start building a school, or the school district building the school, or the county doing some of that road work, or putting in our pot to do road work in that general area. They will get credits on the back end, right? They will get credits for those impact fees, and that's our process. I don't wanna go into it, but they get credit for that when they come in. They don't have to pay impact fees because they paid them upfront. So that's concurrency. I don't know if that answered yours, question about schools, but yeah.
The other one, there's a process started over the last couple of years where there can be some transfer of impact fee credits for
Yeah.
unused. Is that still?
It's still
in play?
valid.
Is there a way to do that outside of the quadrant that the impact fee was used in?
So the state allowed developers, so a lot of these developers, think Silverleaf or Nocatee, where they put millions and millions of dollars of concurrency in, and they have millions and millions of dollars now of impact fee credit. The state came down and said, and we had agreements with these developers, development orders signed by the board and everything, and it would basically say, the developers recognized that they had excess credits, and that was okay, meaning the county, it was in our favor. Well, the state came down and changed that, and now we have many of the developments that do have these excess credits, they're able to sell it. There's like this black market of impact fees going on now. Whatever they are on the dollar, I don't know, but they can transfer them. To answer your question, it says that you can transfer in the same impact fee districts. We have 4 impact fee districts, think the same as the commissioner district,
North, south, east,
southwest.
west,
Yeah. So, they can transfer that money now, so it makes things interesting, because money that the county potentially was counting on as impact fees, there's a lot that we may not be receiving because they're getting rid of their credits, and that was just their loss, and they were willing to accept it, but the state changed it. They must have a power.
But my question is, because it's almost impossible to build affordable housing in the northeast or the northwest, but if someone's got impact fee credits and the employees are already driving through south and west and everywhere else to get there, is there an opportunity to go to the board and say, could the statute be changed or the rules be changed so that these credits could benefit a subdivision going in that was for workforce housing south of State Road 16?
I don't think so, because you're talking about individual developers' money. their credits.
But if they were willing to say it's, I mean, they're, at a certain point, if they're not gonna use the
They could
credits, they're
sell it,
just
they
gonna sell
could
it.
sell it to whoever they wanted to sell it to, as
Right.
long as it's in an appropriate district.
That's what, so that's my question.
Yeah, if you have all the credits in the northwest and the northeast district, and you're trying to get to the southwest district, for example, or
Right.
southeast district, that could be problematic.
But is that a statutory
state.
thing? So the state's the
The
one?
state implemented this whole transfer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one other question. Impact fees get paid, they go into an account. The county earns interest on that fees. Is there any chance we could ever ask for the interest on those fees to be used to help pay impact fees or something else in the affordable housing realm outside of those districts?
I think Commissioner Whitehurst brought this up,
Yeah.
I wanna say right before Christmas, but I can't remember.
I don't know if you could break them out of that district, again, that's a legal question for Keely or whoever, or board, OCA is, but, yeah, I don't know, that hasn't been, I haven't heard it brought up. but-
Cause I just keep thinking if it's interest on an account, it kind of becomes unrestricted.
It may still be restricted,
Yeah.
and Jesse and, from budget or OCA can comment on that, I just don't know.
Okay. And one last question. I was talking to someone the other day and they said, well, St. Johns County's got some of the highest impact fees in the state. And I said, no, I don't think so. Do you know where we compare to other counties?
So during so I don't know, I can't speak to every county, but I did speak to our consultant, and, they actually said we were high, and so, hard to say impact fees because each category is different, and they're not apples to apples because we were looking Putnam County or some others, they don't even have public building fee. So there's one category they don't even have, so it's really hard to compare them apples to apples. But one thing they did say was, and we're proud of this, the board actually decided this, but we had, recommended this was, to put a multiplier for the residential for transportation. And again, if you didn't know, infrastructure is huge, right? Trying to keep up with the cost. You've all heard the Grand Oaks disaster that we've had, and that was because the cost went up so high. But basically a multiplier, the county came up with the cost for transportation impact fees, and then there was a multiplier put on it so that each year it followed the construction price index or CPI, whatever. And that was good, because you said you're actually still at your max. So we didn't have this huge deficit, maybe not exactly good for affordable housing, but for the county on the whole, you're trying to keep up with the cost of infrastructure, which is, and you're an engineer, you're a civil engineer? Yeah, so it's the cost of building roads, right, it's through the roof. And right as COVID hit, it just shifted. I'll give you an example of the cost, if you haven't had an example. We had a road builder that along 16, they were supposed to 4-lane 16 for 3.5 miles. The engineering estimate at the time was 15 million, this was in 18. And they committed on the record and they said, and this has been a big thing in the board if you've seen it, but they said, the commission was super savvy and they said, what if the price goes up, will you pay? And the attorney got with them and said, yeah, we'll cover the cost no matter what. Boy, that helped us in the court case, we did pay. But it ended up being when they needed to start building the road in whatever phase it was, or 4-laning, or whatever the next step is. They did engineering first and they were supposed to come in and do that. It was 45 to 60 million. And they're like, we can't pay this. And we're like, but this is what you said on tape with your attorney before you got approved. But that's the point is, and now it's, I think the estimate for that 3.5 lane on 16 is, you probably know better than I, but I think it's like 100 million. DOT's estimate is different than, so anyway, long story short, that's what a lot of these impact fees you're having to keep up on. I can only imagine how hard it is for somebody doing affordable housing, trying to pay that kind of money, right? That's just, so maybe there will be some waivers, or at least reductions, significant reductions, that would be great.
Yeah, I think whatever, like for the longest time, we always used like $1 million to do a mile or something like that.
Lane mile,
And what
yeah.
huh?
A lane mile, yeah.
Yeah. And then
That was
somebody-
$7 or $8 with that number.
Yeah, and then, somebody just told me, I think one of your guys, like, it was like 10 million to do a mile now or something.
Now, that was Jim Knight from DOT's estimate, and those tend to be on the higher end, but still. I'm saying, like,
I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
Well, they have their requirements, of course, and that's their road too, right, it's like, however you wanna build it, so, anyway, I was long-winded in the answer, but,
That's great.
I'd say we're probably doing they're maybe on the higher end from what I gathered in on that, but if in our non-residential, which you maybe don't care about, but some of those were significantly lower and they're looking into those.
Do you guys ever talk to the city about the fact that they have no impact fees, which was a huge savings for this apartment complex across the street?
Yeah, no,
There's no discussion.
interestingly enough, I would think, I hardly ever talk to that, we just don't have a lot of projects in, I'm sure our engineers do with utilities, cause and water and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But no,
In Marion County, we always had discussions about the gas tax, that some of it went to, we had so many of our suburban, i.e. county residents, were driving into the city. It's a little bit different than here. And so the city would always claim that they deserved more of the gas tax because they were fronting the load of, all the commuters driving in.
Well, I just like the fact that if you're inside the city of St. Augustine, you have no impact on St. Johns County roads.
It's amazing.
Yeah, sure, right?
Cause you never leave the city limits.
Yeah, it goes both ways, right?
We're all healthy.
You're tired
No
of
school,
it, so.
teleport.
When you go through the city.
Greg, did you have a question?
I've got two, actually. The easier of the two, I think, is there a time certain that, impact fees have to be spent on the categories that,
I don't think so, cause you're always gonna have something in the pot. And that money, once it gets into the pot for impact fees, it's at their discretion, the people who build things in our county, right, public works and things, that I think,
the reason why I asked you where I lived previously, there was a big big hassle with impact fees not being spent at all. They were being funneled elsewhere. And that's why I was wondering whether or not we had.
no, that would be a big, everything, they're pretty strict about that, and our budget keeps an eye on that, road goes to road, and then they're always spending it, they have to try to keep up.
If we didn't have impact fees, what does that do to taxes, ad valorem and else, other?
Yeah, I mean, the county has to figure out a way of revenue source to be able to complete projects,
Operate.
and I don't think they'll ever get rid of them once you have them. But some of the smaller counties, I don't know, I'm guessing Putnam doesn't, they don't require trees when you remove trees there, so, it's a small, it's not built out, understandably so, and that's hard to enforce. But yeah, you have to come up with another revenue source, or your infrastructure goes to pot.
Do you guys talk at all about the governor's suggestion about doing away with property taxes?
I heard of it.
I can't believe somebody actually
Crazy.
said that.
Yeah, I haven't had any discussion about it.
We actually, I attended legislative day for AI Florida, and one of our senators, I won't mention who, asked about just blowing away building departments. And the initial reaction was, yeah, great, get rid of them, which there's legislation that is gonna subvert them, right now.
Yeah.
But, doing that kind of stuff just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of big changes. There's a bill out there now, it's not related to affordable housing, but just to show you what's being presented or proposed is, it's a rural enclave, and that's a term in the statutes about, basically, think of a big farm. But if it says, if you're a rural enclave and you border 60-75% of development, then you have by right, you can come in without having, regardless of your land use or your zoning, you can come in now. That's a bill. That'll be interesting to see. We're following that one to see how that one goes. But that's big, cause that just overrides comp plan. That's pretty rare to have something that just comes over and, just says your comp plan is meaningless in that aspect, so we follow that.
So someone could develop like
A
agricultural.
farmer, this would be a farmer who owns this
600
land.
acres.
And they could, cause at that point, if you didn't know, if you're a farmer, you're rural silviculture, you don't have any rights to do any kind of development other than farm. And when you farm, you actually have a lot of rights to be protected, but you can't go in there and put single family down, or you can't put, non-residential down, so, but that's just an example.
Well, and aren't they also talking about doing like the rural farm areas too that are, that some of the counties in Florida have used to kind of, I guess you could say, contain growth and prevent sprawl? I've read that they're trying to get rid of those too.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Say that one again, Jeff?
Some counties in Florida have what they call rural farm areas.
Yeah.
Or farm presentation areas, something like that. And they will use them to A, you know, kind of infringe on development, I use that word kind of neutrally, in those large areas and to protect their agricultural areas, but they also become, almost they're preventative on a sprawl level too, because you can't go in.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything on that one, but if you've seen something on there yeah, I mean, it makes sense if they're doing this, and it's interesting, cause we've recently talked about a farm board, so, and more protection of farms, so that's, but I'm getting way off track, I know that's not the topic here. Mr. Chair,
I usually don't do this, but you led right into, I brought a handout on what he's talking about, and you guys take one and pass it around the table.
Would you mind waiting?
Yes, I'll wait.
Ray, did you have another question?
Well, it wasn't so much a question, more, well, I guess it is, and it's kind of off topic too, but, you know, a lot of the problems we have in St. Johns County are driven by PUDs. And the fact that we get 500 and 600 homes, all single family, in an area, one way in and out of that development, and that's what's loading up the roads. Are there ways in the future, one, to write into regulations that a percentage of that development's gotta be affordable housing, attainable housing, whatever term you want to use. And then, you know, the variety that we're trying to get with triplex and fourplex, duplexes, townhouses, the commercial aspect really is there meant to serve that PUD. You know, in my case, I live in a PUD on State Road 16 that has 5 acres that are, supposed to be given to commercial. And they're right on State Road 16. And they're split, and I think it's 2.5 and a little over 3 or somewhere in that ballpark. Split by the entrance to our, you know, the homeowners all up, you know, they're worried about another storage unit, you know, coming into that place, which generally won't really serve the thing. I think we have to start taking a look at PUDs and how they develop to prevent, you know, I know the Lennars and the D.R. Hortons of the world will have a heart attack if we did that. But one, it may be a better way to control growth and help solve some of our problems that we've got with traffic, with affordable housing. If we can try to, you know, combine all that stuff to go. I don't know how the county would look at that.
I think it's, and that, you're absolutely right, that is certainly a possibility, because the PUD is a planning and development's an ordinance that the board and whoever that developer is, and it's an agreement on what you'll do, will allow you to develop, but you have to meet all these rules, and they're very specific. And they can do that. I think a good start though is this impact fee, potential for reduction or waiving.
Yeah.
Like that's huge if they do that, right? That's huge, because I think AHAC has been, over the years, really trying to find some good incentives, and nothing I think that has been this big, so that's huge, I think, for.
Yeah, as long as they write it that impact savings goes toward constructing, affordable housing in their development. Cause, you know, developers are really creative people. I work with a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they, you know, geez, I just saved, $2.5 million. Let me do this. That has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, if that is implemented, actually Joe's office will work with us in developing some sort of procedures that we make sure that whenever they come in, or if there's a deed restriction, all that stuff, so. But we'll see, hopefully, but that's a good step, and certainly PUDs, that's something the commission within their power. If they wanted to, they could have a developer give a certain percentage. I mean, they created the workforce housing zoning district. Again, it's a higher AMI, but, you know, they could easily do that. Again, it's not as easy to do with everybody screaming that they don't want those people here, but, you know.
And I like the idea if it's like 10% and it's just blended in, and then I think it's a lot less of an impact.
Yeah,
a lot
you
less
don't
of a
want, it
nitty-gritty.
would be, so.
Well, what we showed yesterday in the
Yeah,
county
it would be
commission meeting,
perfect.
you know, it doesn't look any different than, you know, a 2-story single family
Right.
home. You know, we can do it a whole bunch of different ways.
I can tell you that the workforce housing zoning has made Mike and I probably bang our heads against the wall more than anything, the things that I've worked on since I've been with them.
And we have a developer who's trying to get out of providing an agreement, I won't say who it is, but they have a commitment to provide affordable housing. And it was back in the day, so the affordable housing, the way it was written, wasn't written in a way that contemplates the future very well, but it's still affordable housing. So we're struggling with that, cause they can't sell them, but you know, it's like, well, that's not our problem.
Jim Davidson once said to me, when I asked him why he couldn't contribute money to the housing partnership for our affordable housing work, I said, well, you've got a DRI requirement. He said, I have clear instructions on how to take care of a gopher tortoise than I do to create affordable housing in my DRI.
True.
But to finish my thought too, you know, one of the things, I'm not sure that Commissioner Walter really came to our AHAC meetings when he was alive and he would hear a lot, but he did definitely like follow what y'all were doing. And I think a lot of what ended up eventually in the workforce housing, not saying that it couldn't be better, ended up because of discussions that were here. So, I mean, that's.
Yeah, that was a
AHAC.
start, and that was huge, cause we had never had anything like that, and they got it off the ground. I was with him and Daryl Locklear at the time, we all went to, even Jim Davidson and Bob Porter from
Chris
PR
Reed
and
and Porter.
just tried to get something, they didn't wanna bog it down with too much regulation initially, cause it might be difficult to get it through, so that's kinda why I think it was there. So maybe now we're starting to look at more sophisticated, affordable housing.
Mike, I had a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
When we kind of touched base on that, I was looking at a chart. I mean, St. Johns County, we do have like, I think it's like top 7 highest impact fees in the state. And I understand there's like several categories that go into that.
Sure.
I think transportation was still pretty, we were still pretty high on that. Do you know why compared to other counties? Well, when was the last time we did the impact fees?
Yeah, we're supposed to do every 5 years, we're on year 7, because it just got done. We're working through it, we've had the consultant working on it for, you know, almost a year now, so anyway, every 5 years is when we're supposed to do it, and we're working through it right now.
Do you remember the last time when they did the study? And I'm sorry for showing up
It
late
was
if I missed
18,
that.
yeah, I
Or
talked about it a little
why?
bit, so in 2018, they did the study, and I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the impact fees related to, where we put a multiplier on it.
Yeah, well, you were talking about, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, 2018 was when it was accomplished, and, you know, they set it at whatever the fees were, and then we put the multiplier on the transportation fees because of the cost of road increase.
Okay.
And so we're at they basically said we're close to our limit, so we did it basically just right, we feel, cause it's right at there, if you want high impact fees for infrastructure, I'm not talking about affordable housing.
They took a what?
Cause that's what you want for regular development to pay, you know, so at least in terms of what the board wants. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm still curious why ours was a little bit higher, even if it was done like 5-6 years ago before the
Yeah,
population.
so if they set a rate, and the rate was the highest defensible rate that you could go at that time. And then when I say multipliers, they put a 3% increase on it, or whatever the construction price index was. Normally you don't do that, but they knew the costs were increasing so much, so that's why they ended up being, when the consultant did the research, they're like, you really don't need to change these to get to the highest, so you can give the board, here's what your highest number is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I read it was like 25 counties don't charge impact fees in the state, but those are counties that don't really have a huge.
Yeah, smaller
population.
counties tend not to, the more population you get to, that's when they start,
Yeah.
they tend to have more regulations.
But theoretically, if you have a lot of infrastructure in place too, like cities, there's really not the need for it, supposedly.
Yeah, cause Duval County is really low on that list as far as their impact fee costs.
They're built out.
Yeah, they're built out.
I mean, the thought would be that they've got a pretty elaborate water.
And there's
sewer
other options, there's some
grid.
other options out there that are called like for transportation specifically, so you could have all those other impact fees, but instead of having transportation, you can have what's called a mobility fee. And it's a different way of looking at, and analyzing and coming up with a fee for development, so it encourages, if you're building near infrastructure, it encourages you to do that by lower fees, and if you're out in, you know, Podunk, then, and you're dragging facilities out there, then it would be a lot higher of a cost. That's the general idea of it. And, for our county being rural, it doesn't maybe necessarily make a lot of sense. You have to have a land use map that doesn't get updated a lot. We have a land use map that historically has been updated quite a bit. And, so there are some other options out there, but this is what we have, this is impact fees. And yeah, I don't know about the other ones. I was saying that the non-resident, as on the whole, the non-residential impact fees, there's quite a few that were low, and they're gonna try to increase them. Again, it's just to show the maximum to the board, you know, and they decide whatever it is. They could eliminate impact fees if they want to.
And then I don't know, do you have any other options as far as for affordable housing impact fees? Have you heard from other counties or?
Yeah, I
thoughts
mean,
on that?
there's
not really too much.
Yeah, I mean, as far as impact fees goes, a waiver is like the ultimate, right? If you pull that out, I was, for the small, $14,000, $10,000 per home, and if that just gets gone away, if you got a, 200-300 unit, apartment complex, that's huge, huge. So that could be good, and then other things like the zonings where you can, I use, it's not conditional, but it's like a conditional zoning, where, the county can require percentages. They could do that with certain zoning districts, not even just PUDs if they wanted to, but certainly within PUDs, because that's the primary development tool that seems to be used in our county. And you could require certain percentages, again, not the fees, but at least encouraging it or requiring it even. I don't know that we're there yet, but the impact fees would be like huge, huge.
Overlay districts
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, overlay districts, you could do that.
Mike, when I first got here, we were having conversations about linkage fees. I can't really recall much of that conversation. That was pre-COVID, so.
Yeah,
that was
we
my
started
pre-COVID.
talking about that, I don't remember what we talked about then. So.
Yeah, it was like when we first, it was 18 or 19 maybe, when Suzanne was here.
Yeah, linkage fees are basically, right, you're paying, when you come in, if you're a developer, maybe you don't put in affordable housing, but you pay a linkage fee to offset that
Offset
you're
it,
developing,
yeah.
and it goes towards some sort of affordable housing pot.
I think there's only 1 or 2 counties in Florida that are doing it, and that they're both in South Florida, if I recall.
Yeah.
And we didn't get real far with that, as you can see.
And that's where there's still someone brought up at the last meeting, there's some commercial impact fees from old DRIs that are just starting to get paid into by a couple of the developers up in the Silverleaf area. But it's
That would be-
old DRI stuff.
Maybe, but usually all the DRIs, they've satisfied that through their infrastructure building initially, so they get all the credits. They
No,
build
this is some kind of an additional fee on commercial.
I think
That they
Beth
have to
Birdie
keep.
brought up, maybe 3 meetings ago, about, Silverleaf they pay X amount of dollars into the Affordable Housing Fund, based on square footage.
Oh, that was just written into their DRI, that's just
Yeah.
what they do, yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
And I think some of it's still kind of ongoing, right? I mean, it's a big project.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big challenge there was, somebody had sent me part of the, I guess, the language in it. And at the time, I don't know, somewhere say around World Golf Village or something. But the idea was the funds would be spent within 5 miles or a 20-minute drive of that region, which in 1998, 5 miles, 20 minutes got you far. These days, 5 miles, 20 minutes gets you to the end of the block. So it's kind of like, so we're still stuck with, the funds are limited to a very small area they can be spent in.
Yeah, we have a lot of the older developments, there's nothing you can do about them, they have the contract between the developer and the county. And we don't get a lot of, there's no more DRIs anymore, those are just big PUDs, for those who don't know, development of regional impact. And, so we're struggling with a lot of those when they come in, because they were written at the time, they made sense at the time, but they may not make sense now. So anything that does come in and offers it, let's say Water Lilies is a huge development that's coming in, or being proposed to come in out on 214. If they were to come in and they were to offer affordable housing, that's something that Joe's office and our office would work closely with to make sure we had some general enough language in there that the CYA for the county, when we actually get affordable housing.
Carry it through for a couple.
Yeah, when it gets to get implemented, but it was just, we don't have as much of that.
Yeah, sometimes when we're flexible too, and thinking about some of the Hudson properties, we have all those lots that are down in the Elkton area, and, they're really, I wouldn't say they're worthless, but right now they're not easily developable. But I mean, to the staff's credit at the time, it has allowed for us to do some things that are flexible. We were able to make a nice little land trade. It was only a couple of parcels. I was able to get some frontage on the road down at the end of Elkton Road, and we were able to help Melinda build her community center, which is going through review right now. So, I mean, those things are kind of small, but we have underserved communities are kind of crucial too. But, I guess what I'm going with this is it's really easy to kind of pack these things away in the DRI. We talk about the 5 minutes or the 20-mile rule, or vice versa. But, other things that we've been creative about, sometimes we've had to go do a little digging because they happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But we've been able to make some things happen, and I'm hopeful we can continue to do that.
Well, any more questions from Mike?
I do have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, who gets their fees waived at this point? How common is that?
Nobody.
Okay.
Could, Ability Housing had like $1 million in impact fees. Could, if there was a procedure, could you use the waivers to entice tax credit deals?
Well, that actually wasn't a waiver, that was a.
No, I know, I'm sorry, y'all should not have done what you did to them, that's garbage.
Well,
You don't take impact fees and say you don't have to pay them for 15 years and then you have to pay interest on it, they're not gonna be able to pay in 15 years either. You know, there's no way. So it's just, but it was a way to just get their credit with Florida Housing so they could build it. But if we could use impact fee waivers to entice a tax credit property, which gets you back to those people at 60% AMI.
It would stand alone, if it was approved, it's out there public, you know, it's not,
Yeah.
you don't even have to include, I mean, you could include it in some sort of package, but it's there for everybody at that point, so that,
Yeah.
that could be.
I think to do something like that, especially with SHIP dollars, in that particular example where you say the impact fees are $1 million, and you probably know way better than I do, Bill, that would be a huge chunk of our SHIP fees. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, that's the nice idea. A waiver doesn't mean we're gonna use SHIP funds and pay it. A waiver means we, the county, our community has decided, in this case, we need this so strongly
Mhm.
that we're willing to collectively sort of ignore it.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was a pretty good reaction from the commissioners, a couple of commissioners anyway, about that, for the 60 and down, yeah.
Mhm.
80 to 120, they're like, that's not really
All right, well, Mike, we appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if there's anything we can do to help out, you know, as far as moving forward.
Yeah, and then pass it along to Joe too, if there's some you have any questions about, we can, we'll get you a quick answer, and, yeah, but follow the board when the impact fee comes back up, cause you'll hear the consultant talk about what options are on the table for them. And, you know, that's probably a good time for somebody
Does
who's
the
passionate about it to speak.
Does the consultant have any suggestion or encouragement to promote some affordable housing ideas within the impact fee structure? Or do they just kind of do the math and leave everything else alone?
No, I mean, we'll give them direction on whatever to do. I mean, they're working for us, so that's, like I said, we told them, we said, that was direction, make sure you do that too, and come back with some options. And I would say, you know, if I was giving them options, which I probably will have to, when we get into the weeds, it'll be, look for one that's complete waiver, give an option that's a quarter or even half or whatever it is, so that, you know, they may not wanna go full, right? And then put it out there, cause it's pretty straightforward, it's just either a reduction or.
Pay it or don't?
Yeah, based on what their comments were, so.
Watching the board currently, whenever they have a plan or a process that they're trying to implement for years forthcoming, they usually have, it seems, 2 or 3 discussions. So Mike's right, if you want to go and opine about the impact fees, I would watch when he shows up on the agenda, make some time and come speak about the issue. Cause there will probably be more than one discussion.
All right, well, thanks for letting me
Thank
come
you.
talk.
We
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Mike.
We'll be in touch, yeah.
Take care.
Where was he?
What's that?
Where are we at, the agenda?
Next one.
Did
Kind of,
we do the approval of minutes?
we've done all that, just keep going down the line.
Review and evaluate impact fees. Well, for the sake of time, do we need to do the appointments?
done. They got approved yesterday.
Yes, I think it's just the announcement that
Oh, okay,
they
sorry.
were, approved yesterday, at the board.
So we have 3?
Right.
Yes, thank you. We have 2 reappointments, and then, Tracy Sachs was appointed, and that is, a couple months, and that was the backfill of Lindsay's seat, I believe, correct?
Carl here.
Oh, Carl, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll have to go through it again in August, I think.
Right.
But
It's what?
is what I'm getting to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I was so surprised when he said, ending August 20.
There's a fee. But he said if
I was hoping to be here today, but I
you
guess,
work with us, right,
Yeah, Tracy had a
So we could
conflict,
reduce the fee.
and, she
but I told
intends
him
to be at a
unfortunately, I'm gonna be out of town. Yeah. Is there a way to do it?
We're kind of running short on time here. Did anybody have anything you wanted to add about impact fees right now, or
He said no.
suggestions that come up with? Okay. I think that was a really good discussion, having Mike here, so I appreciate you
Laura.
Laura, yeah.
Sorry, I'm Laura today.
Laura Michelle.
Laura Michelle, yeah.
I'll see if I can get the answer on the interest. I can't remember who asked about the interest.
That would just be nice, because you know there's gotta be a nice little chunk of it.
I don't really have anything more to add other than, I know this is something that we still wanna work on and come up with more ideas. Sorry for being late, guys. But right now, does anybody else have any general comments?
Alan,
Yes.
I wanted to bring it out in the open, so we don't have any conflicts with, the sunshine laws. In the next couple of months, I'm gonna hold a couple of, cocktail parties where I'm gonna invite stakeholders in the area. I'm gonna work with the chamber, work with Mike and his group. We talked about it, months ago, or around Christmas time. But to introduce people more to missing middle housing and what it can do for the community, to, try to get this up. I'm gonna fund the thing myself. We'll have maybe 20 or 30 people, and hopefully we get some movers and shakers there that, can start to put some of the heat on the county to start looking at zoning options, to allow that type of, construction, primarily the triplex and the fourplex right now. I had a meeting with the International Code Council today, and I was afraid they were gonna shift this into the building hearing committee, but they're going to the residential, which means they look like they're gonna be behind, helping to get this through.
Making it
So,
residential.
yeah, and if they can get it passed before the Florida Building Commission does it, we're in better shape to tell the Florida Building Commission, look, it's coming, why don't you just go ahead and suck it up and get it in?
Did you share about your meeting with Commissioner Joseph?
No, I didn't. I met with her, last Thursday, and you guys would all be shocked as I was. I mean, I walked out of there on clouds. I showed her a triplex, and we showed it yesterday. Judy showed the floor plans, and I had a rendering. She was head over heels. She goes, this is a great idea. Why didn't anybody bring this up before? I've got a bunch of single women friends who would love to buy a building like this and rent out the 1 and 2 bedroom and live in the 3. So she was actually behind it, and she actually said too, in the commission meeting yesterday, that she was a fan of the design. These things can be done at 3 different levels. We could do an attainable level, a market level, and a luxury level. They can look very similar. Getting the attainable down from the luxury is not that hard. We changed some of the detailing, we reduced the number of windows. If the ICC passes the code, we may or may not have to sprinkle the building. If we do, we go down to a residential sprinkler, which is a lot less expensive than what you actually for. And, the stairs, the stairs energy, a lot of those things get reduced by being in the residential code. So she was all for it.
So now it's encouraging them to redefine before, like you said, it's coming, just do it now. Let's get ahead of the curve while we're doing this comp plan, and then the LDC follows.
Right. If we waited for the Florida Building Commission, it could take 6 years for that to get into the code.
Congrats, that's awesome. Yeah. Orville, how's the, update study, the, chamber coming?
It should be done.
Okay.
I was out last week, so I haven't, talked to them.
If nobody
Yeah,
has
I
any-
should mention too that Jenny and I participated in a conversation with the chamber too. I think they had kind of pumped the brakes, but they told me a little bit to see how things were, gonna move on with the new commission. But I think that they plan on in the spring making, additional presentations.
We're gonna start, meeting back up at the chamber itself with the group, so,
Yeah.
cause we're the ones that drove getting the reports done, but we're gonna restart that. It's on my calendar next month.
Cool. Yeah, I was really impressed with some of the comments by the economist. She was, really understood, a lot of the issues that we face and, what the workforces.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah, very thorough.
If there's any other comments from the board, I'll open it up to public comment.
I do wanna make one more thing, Jay just brought something to my attention. There are a lot of, growth bills that are going through, the legislature right now. One of them, some of them are being geared towards affordable housing. I don't know how far they're gonna go. I was watching the rural, development one, myself, but just kind of out of personal interest, but, also Jenny mentioned about the ADUs. The state is talking about doing ADUs, for all single-family residences, by right. It could be a really great thing. It's something that we've struggled with here in St. Johns County a little bit too. Some of the communities where they have a lot of, short-term rentals have been pushing back against it a little bit because they're concerned because the state, in a lot of cases, has taken away the ability to regulate your short-term rentals. So I think there's a lot of confusion. Hey, you're gonna let everybody do this. Is it just gonna be open season on short terms? Are we gonna be dealing with a lot of new code cases? As you know, sometimes the beaches become party houses. Let's just call it what it is. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Did they state there's something they're gonna do with 12-month leases, or is that?
I have not seen any of that.
That was the one question that I was just concerned, that and just off-street parking.
I heard there was 6 month at least, that there was a potential for somebody was proposing 6 months.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I saw another bill where they're trying to get rid of all CRAs by
Yeah.
2045 or something like that.
That seems to come up like every 8 or 9 years. I was especially fascinated that one of the House members brought it up this time. His community has really, at least in my opinion, benefited from the, I won't name names, but from the CRA. So I was, I'm a little shocked to hear it kind of, but I don't know if everybody feels like this is the year we take a swing at it and see what happens, or.
We're swinging at so much stuff, it's not
Yeah.
surprising.
But in some of our older communities, although the CRAs are no longer with the housing department anymore, they're really, they can be just great things. You can bond, you can do projects, and that's how the Common Center got built.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine, what sovereignty would be like right now had it not had the Common Center.
You have to wait for gentrification to do anything.
Yeah.
That's the real problem with
Shame.
Lincolnville. It's a great CRA, but it's not, they've lost the ability to serve low-income people there for the most part.
Bill says sometimes things that are in my head. Just being honest, but.
I don't know who's on the wrong side of that one.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree with you sometimes, sometimes you feel like you have a problem a little bit too, but, really the way that we've done redevelopment in the state of Florida is through redevelopment itself, and hopefully the things will either be gentrified or new development. I would argue that's probably where all the PUDs came from, not just here in our county, but really around the state. I read a great article, I thought to share it with you if I can find it again, but, just stating how the entire PUD process is for larger developers, if you're a smaller developer to go through the PUD process is just painful as all get out. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
All right, back to public comment.
I'll try to be fast, and I think I can answer a couple questions that came up here. On that rural bill, I'll pass this around, pretend you're in school again.
We missed you yesterday, Stan.
That one is on that rural bill that came up today. Gives you, Thousand Friends of Florida is really keeping up with that, they're a good site to look at. They put an amendment on the bill Monday, when it passed through their first committee, and it will, limit the minimum of rentals for those, for an ADU, okay? I'm trying to talk fast here, and I'm talking about
It's okay,
two
take
separate
your
bills,
time.
okay, but you get me. On the ADU, it's gonna be 1 month, okay? Which, I'm not real thrilled about that, but it is what it is, they're making some progress. The ADU thing is not gonna apply to, PDUs. It won't apply to something else that isn't coming into my head right now. HOAs. HOAs can still prohibit them. And right now, that's what we're having built, PUDs everywhere. So I don't know how much that's gonna help us, but it could help.
I read somewhere that I think the entire state of Florida 68% of its residents live in an HOA.
Yeah, yeah.
Or has to somewhere.
So when they start saying it's not good for that, oh, you're looking for one of those, aren't you, sir?
What is ADU?
Accessory dwelling unit.
A
Like a
granny
granny
flat,
flat.
yeah,
Okay.
a granny flat.
Okay,
like that.
yeah.
You get one room, I've got plenty of those. But that rural bill could be a good thing or a bad thing, and what Fred was talking about, part of the bill says, now, it says strict local control by forcing administrative approval of massive developments in agricultural enclaves and infill residential areas, which is what he's working on, trying to get them to do infills with, if this passes, it might help you. Otherwise, the other thing is, it's gonna, decimate the development boundary that they have in our comp plan. It'll be meaningless anymore. And it will allow sprawl, which, again, it depends on how you look at it. I'm not gonna tell you how to look at it, it's just keep up with it and decide how you feel. If PUDs start getting thrown out in ag, and we start asking our BCC to put language in those PUDs, specific language, they can put specific language at 60% in there if they want to. Well, that's what we've got left, folks, to build is ag land. It could be helpful, but you know, you gotta look for utilities and all that kind of thing. So, that's that.
Eliminate public hearings.
I wish he would, I knew he wasn't gonna stick around, but I'll call him on the phone. I wanted to ask, in those impact fees, like Alpha Omega that we were talking about today, they build to rent. And Bill builds some build to
Correct.
rent. Does Alpha Omega pay impact fees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody,
everybody.
currently, nobody gets out of impact. They are initiating a small impact fee rebate program, but it's gonna be onesies, twosies. It's not, cause they're using SHIP funds to do it. So it's not like there's enough to do a
Okay,
40 unit
all right.
apartment.
And those DRIs, I was the person that brought that up, and I talked to you about that. That percentage that's left in those DRIs, when I went back and looked, nobody apparently is keeping track of that pot of money really well.
No.
They don't know what's there, what's not there. If you ask the developer, they say it's all taken care of, and then they'll point to some organization they gave the money to, or some land swap like out in Armstrong, and say, I've done my thing, I'm not gonna talk to you anymore.
Right.
So, you know, that's not very helpful.
But that's to Mike's point, so much of that DRI stuff was written by lobbyists, and it was vaguely construed
Well, we're
because
not
nobody
gonna have
wanted
any
to
more of
feed.
those, so, you know,
Right.
we only have to talk about here
But
forward.
you've got the same kind of issues with the workforce housing zoning district overlays,
Yeah.
because that's not very clear. There's no recapture if someone says, oh, I can't do it.
Yeah, I know. And our Board of County Commissioners are very willing now, to do write-ins on those PUDs. But if they don't know what you don't tell them. So you've got to tell them specifically what you want. And they'll usually go along with it and see if the developer will, and that's gonna be the key for us, because what we're doing right now, this workforce housing, I think, has moved about as far as we can go with it, with what we're dealing with. Now it's all these townhouses, and we've got too many, and they're unaffordable. So I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and the city does waive some of their, fees. They don't have impact fees, but they have other fees. They waived it, I know for sure, for the Wildflower Clinic when they built over in West Augustine. We did not have to pay for our utilities to be put in.
You're talking about a
We didn't have to-
utility connection fee.
Yeah.
They're in the county, so the city couldn't waive anything other than utilities.
That's what they waived then.
Yeah, I think
And that helped.
it does.
It helped.
Traditionally, I can't speak for the city, but if I was looking at it from the outside and as a planner, they seem to take some of their connection fees as an act of economic development. So they will sometimes work with both the county and some of the community groups to get things done by removing some of those fees, or help us with connections, or go after grants like we've done in West Augustine to do connections too. And to them, that's all a big economic developer, and it does help with affordable housing. We've got all kinds of things going on in West Augustine right now that I'm hopeful that we can continue to have conversations with them about in order in an effort to further develop their, I call it the traffic circle around 4 Mile, but that's where our Seawood neighborhood is. And there are some vacant lots. Some of them will need a lot of mitigation, but I'm hopeful we can do some stuff there.
Is that Ellen Avery Smith involved in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just talked to her.
Any more comments?
Well, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm Charlie, I'm here today. My wife had to work, so I had to babysit.
Big baby.
Yeah. But at the county commission meeting yesterday, they looked at, and they seemed like to hone in on the comp plan about, further developments, cause what's being built up in this area and what's in the future use of the comp plan for, building homes, developments and everything like that, as best I can remember. But I was wondering how the affordable housing is dealt with being in the comp plan. Is it directly into the comp plan about being able to put something in there? Or is it just with the whole building of it?
So I will give you this is just my personal opinion about comp plans. Comp plans are generally pretty broad. We're gonna point the ship in this direction, and the nuances are sometimes left out at that level. A lot of the things that you will hear us speak about here, Mr. Hunt, is typically things that are more related to either your fees that are dealt with here, very on a minutiae type level. We might talk about 4 different categories. I don't even want to get into that stuff. Or land development regulations. So I looked at the comp plan stuff about 3 weeks ago, and I interpreted that the same way. That has been my professional history in dealing with comp plan stuff too. It's very broad. You will see things in there. Typically, I'm used to seeing, I think it's like a Res 1, where it's like 1 unit per half acre or something along those lines. That's typically, if they capture that, that's where you'll see a lot of our single family housing kind of go into, for a lack of a better term. And then we just mentioned, you'll see those sort of things go into the PUDs. Those PUDs will probably the way that, for better or for worse, the way Florida continues to develop. And then I think the hope has always been that's where we'll capture the affordable housing, is wherever there's going to be a housing component. I don't know if anybody in the room, maybe some of you have all dealt with this professionally, feels any differently than I do, but that's kind of how I view comp plans.
They're aspirational. This is what we want to be. And there should be direction in there, though, that leads to what the LDC, Land Development Code, is going to allow. That's what Judy and I got up and spoke about yesterday, was that, they need the whole thing on attainable housing and missing middle in the comp plan, from what we know about right now, is just very general. There needs to be a little more directive in that. So hopefully that's what we'll get in the red line process.
Yeah, I think too, Mr. Hunt, when you say people challenge land use and zoning changes, they will often use, both attorneys and activists or citizens will use the comp plan as their argument against. And I think that some of the thinking there is, by some of our groups in town, is that they get more information packed into that comp plan, the more defensible or things are, or the more there's an opportunity for us to challenge some things that they don't want to see go on. One that I can think of in the city just recently was at just off of Masters. There was an old lot that kind of adjacent to Oyster Creek that they had been trying to develop for years. It had a for sale sign on it, at least since I moved to town. And the residents came out and they were fighting it using both the comp plan as well as some of the environmental regulations and overlays over in that area too. And they were successful. And I mean, they even went a step further and were able to get the city to fund buying that piece of property. So those are the things I think when people really kind of dig in on the comp plan, I think that's kind of what they're shooting for. Maybe not the answers today, but maybe tomorrow if we have to really try to go after something aggressively and get the county to do it, right, and get the elected officials to do it.
Please don't call me Mr. Hunt, makes me nervous.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm not in a court, or, there's a policeman standing outside my door. But, no, that's what they were bringing up, and, you know, and, because, one of the, there's, besides the, water lily, has been in planning for 5 years, so it might start surfacing more and more as the parish farms, which 2,800 acres, 3,700 houses
yeah,
between 207 and 206, and, you know, and how will that, if that would have any effect of having to put something like that, you know, and, so, yeah, that's what I'm, trying to understand, because the way it looked, that, yeah, from, pretty much 16 north is pretty much all big housing developments done as much as they can. It's just floodgate is like 208 and south of that.
I don't disagree with you, and I think some of the stuff that Ms. Kulak brought up with too is, you know, I think that there's a lot of anticipation that a lot of our agricultural properties are gonna see more development pressures. And in some cases, it appears that maybe the state's going to help them a little bit, and in some cases, you know, we'll see comp plans and citizens kind of dig in against it too.
Thank you.
Wish I could go, but I have company.
Any more comments? With that said, I appreciate everybody coming out, and, we'll be in touch soon. We'll move forward with the plan, so.